live to love you as long as I want to, long as I promise you, baby, I'm gonna love you as long as I live. Baby, I can't live to love you as long as I want to. Life is long enough, baby, but I can love you as long as I live. Yeah, maybe I can't give you diamonds and things like I want to, but I can promise you, baby.
Hello everybody, I would like to welcome you to the first of our Artist Talk. And tonight, our curator, Angela Fremont, yes?
Yes.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, well, okay. Hi, everybody. About myself?
Yeah, what was the thinking behind the show? The show is called Our Mothers, for those of you who don't know, who didn't get to come the opening night. Why a show about mothers? What was the thinking behind it?
Thanks for asking me about that. Since the 70s, I've been doing paintings, art, everything about my mother and my experiences growing up in Florida. And it has just been such a big part of my thinking about how I experience my life, I guess. Yeah. And I thought, as it's such a obviously universal topic, and I really wanted to create an opportunity for people to respond to the question, what is the topic Our Mothers mean to you?
Yeah. Well, that is a highly personal topic, right? And
it's not only personal, but it could also be thematic. Mm-hmm. It could also be historical. Yeah. It could also be in terms of historical, it could be ancestral. It could be it could relate also to what's happening in the world.
Well, I know from reading about you, you've been greatly affected by everything that's going on in the world, you know, from Gaza to Sudan to Mali, just about every place that you can name, and what's happening to the mothers and the children, because I think that is a really important point in this discussion.
Exactly, Wendy, and in fact, in 2014, the children in Chibok, Nigeria, schoolgirls were kidnapped.
Right.
And I responded by creating 276 small ceramic sculptures, and that took about 7 years to complete that
7 years to complete that project, right?
And
we all remember what happened. It was all over the news.
It was, and now it's 11 years later, and there are still 93 schoolgirls unaccounted for.
That are still unaccounted for. And I think, you know, what I'm getting from you is you've used art to really call attention to what is a political situation, as an artist, all of you, we have so much power in the art that we create. And you obviously are getting people to think about this by using your art to remember those missing schoolgirls. Because like many things right now, it's been swept under the rug. I could go into a room even in Manhattan and mention this, and people would look at me like I had two heads. Why are you bringing that up? So thank you for what you've done.
The project, the Chibok project, is a fundraising project to support survivors of the atrocities and the trauma in Nigeria, northeastern Nigeria, and northwestern Nigeria as well. And it is an ongoing project with foundations there.
Thank you. Art is power. Olivia Beans, you're in the hot seat next, because you're to my left. How did you get involved in this project and your particular piece of work, Needle Girl Trapped in a Web?
Yeah, well, Angela and I have known each other for a long time, as Sana and I have known each other, although not as well as we might, and hopefully tonight we'll know each other better. Needle Girl and the other piece I have on the wall here, I didn't start out making them specifically about my mother, but I realized I work very intuitively, and I don't always know what I'm doing until maybe after the fact. But Needle Girl is something that I found on the web, and I realized how, like Alice, I may be stuck in this web of trying to find out who my mother was, who her parents were, and on and on. And during my life, ever since I've been a very little girl, I've searched and searched through old photographs and writings and memories about my mother, trying to figure out who she was and how it relates to me, because who she was informs my own identity.
Right.
And just as a little background, my mother was Czech, born there. Her father was in World War I. He lost his leg. His leg was amputated, between the knee and the thigh. And I remember meeting him for the first time when I was 11 years old, and seeing him put on the leather straps and, walking down the street. And my grandmother was a very kind of small, diminutive woman, but she got around the neighborhood, and she knew how to work people and
work the crowd, we call
it,
it, right?
She knew how to work the crowd, and the black market and all of that, and and I think she had been a maid. So they came, and my grandfather probably was a clerk, and they came from a very modest family. My mother was the one of two girls. She was the ugly duckling who became the beautiful swan. Her sister looked just like her, but was like, very ordinary. But my mother kind of stood out. And when the Germans marched into Prague in, I guess it was 1939, my mother was 16 years old and had always wanted more and better, and met a man who was a German officer, actually, that she fell in love with. And there are these incredible photographs that I look at that were buried in a trunk that I'd search through when I was a little girl, to try to figure out what was going on. But that didn't work for various reasons, and she married my father, who was Dutch, and they moved to Holland, and where I was born. And my mother hated Holland. She hated it. She couldn't.
Was it a little bland for her?
I don't know that it was bland. It was too organized and too
bland, organized, just a little too,
too very, very regulated. And anyway, then she was in touch with a Czech girlfriend of hers. Her dream had always been to marry an American. And her friend Nellie lived in Portugal, and she took me at the age of 4. My father thought that I would be back in Holland, but never was. And we moved to Portugal, and then later to the United States, where she finally met her, I don't know, second or third American. But anyway, I don't know.
I love her. We want to hear all about you, because everything about you that came from your mother is in the pieces that you have on the wall here, and that's important.
So here's the thing about languages. I spoke Dutch and Czech as a little girl, and they would say, I'd say like mokaflik. So that was like fly in both Czech and in Dutch. So I spoke sort of both languages. And then when we moved to Portugal, I learned Portuguese like that. And my mother, I got a job with Radio Free Europe. And
oh my God, you just can't throw that out there. I remember all of this, right? Radio Free Europe. You worked for Radio Free Europe.
Wow. She worked for Radio Free Europe. Wow. So in Portugal, she earned a lot of money, and she could hire someone to take care of me. And there I was, this little girl, not knowing where in the hell she was. And I refused to talk to my mother in Dutch. I said, from now, so she hired, she said, a translator to come in. I can't imagine doing that with my own son, getting a translator to translate for, my child. But then later, just skipping back, because I don't want to go on too long, there's, it's a whole long history, but when we were coming over to the United States, my stepfather was a what do you call it, a radio engineer for TWA, and we flew over first class, mind you, and everybody on the plane, I think, was speaking in English, and I had been to an English speaking school for a year, so I knew a little bit of English. And I said to my mother, I said, from now on, we will speak English.
I love it, right. What did she say?
She just went with it.
Okay.
She didn't argue.
She didn't even argue with you?
No, she did not. She did not. So anyway, that's a little bit of the beginning.
So these stories are really, really important, because for me personally, I look at art on the walls when I go to these shows, and I recently went to a collective and it was packed and nobody knew anything about the artists, and there weren't even tags above their names, and something went off in my head that said, this is not okay. Okay, remember, in the great points in history, it was the artists that were really doing the dynamic stuff. Yes. Artists have a lot of power. We're in a time when people feel like their power is being taken away from them. As artists, you have a lot of power. And I'll get back to you, because I do want to find out what came up for you when you were creating the work for this show. Sana, here you go. You have your own mic, good. Sana Musasama, you have a doll, a wooden doll. And I'm going to give it up to you to tell me the story behind that doll.
It's a ceramic doll.
She's ceramic, she's not wooden. Oh boy.
But she springs from being a wooden doll.
Okay, so we did a little bit of wood in there.
Yeah.
I love that.
I live in the house that can people hear me?
Can we hear that one? If that one is not okay, take mine. That's fine.
So I live in St. Albans, Queens, and it's actually the house that I grew up in, Four Sisters, and it's a Navy-based community. It's where brown people who were in the military were able to buy property on GI plan. So the whole community was Navy-based, and my mom and dad both come from Florence, South Carolina. My mother is the oldest of 7 children, and Her father died when she was 12. So at 17 or 18, she was put on the Greyhound bus and sent to Manhattan to do domestic work to support her sister.
17 years old to help support the family.
To support her family in New York. And she did it, you know. She honored her family, she loved her mother, and she did it. And I remember as a teenager going through the closet drawers and finding her little slips of where she was a domestic and where she was fired because she burned somebody's shirt or she
You hear those stories all the time, right?
Just read them over and over again. But anyway, that's what she did. And she also did domestic work in St. Owens, Queens, which was on the border of Adelaide Park, where you had entertainers, black entertainers. And most of the men in the community, when they came home from the military, they would come home with a wife of the countries that they were in, and they were never brown women. No, they were never brown. They were always of where they were. And I just remember it, which was not an issue until all of us got to the age of about teenagers. And I remember very clearly that the guys on the block preferred the girls that were biracial.
Wow.
They preferred the hair that could blow in the wind. They preferred the keen nose. They preferred thin lips. And all of a sudden, I saw a difference. And I was ignored, being a very dark-skinned brown girl with woolly, kinky hair and very full features. And it bothered me. And I looked at these girls who I grew up with who were very, very beautiful. They were my friends. You know, we loved each other. We ran through each other's homes growing up. There were no boundaries. If I was at Mrs. Wilson, it was dinner time. She took me in the tub with her children.
She fed you too,
and I
right?
sat
All
at
the
the
table.
you know. And so with the age of puberty and looking at the opposite sex, I saw that I was not considered beautiful or attractive or being interested in. In fact, the worst thing that could happen during that time period was to be called Blackie. And that's what I was called all the time, Blackie, because I was a dark brown girl around very light-skinned black girls. So my mother saw me sulking one day in the kitchen about it, and she asked me what was wrong. And I don't remember what I told her, but it silenced her for a little while. And she said, I have 4 other sisters in a crowded household, extended family, uncles and aunts that came and really never left. They lived forever with us. And so to sit down at the kitchen table that I sit down at now, and with my mother, just me and her shoulder to shoulder, was something kind of rare. I felt tremendously loved in my household by both my parents and my siblings, but that individual attention, it wasn't. It was group attention. Stories were read to us in a group. We all doubled up in beds together, so stories were told to us. And that day, I had her one-on-one. She said, go get your comb, go get your brush. And I ran and got my comb and brush, and she said, let's go get some beads. And I went and got some beads. And then she said, let's go out in the yard and pick up some stuff. So the yard was my playground, it was my landscape. So we picked up sticks and leaves and rocks. And then we sat at the table and we made a doll together. And I just remember sitting arm to arm with her. I didn't really care so much about the doll. I never liked dolls growing up. I liked removing doorknobs and carving my name into the wall.
I love it. You're both
And
artists.
my sisters loved dolls, and I just didn't care about dolls. I didn't care about braiding
But something
hair.
about this doll and your
But
mother's
me
attention
and
was
Mom with
different.
this doll. So she sat there and she made this doll, and she had far more joy in making this doll than I did, and I had so much joy observing her making this doll.
Right.
So she'd pick it up and she'd look at it and she said, isn't it beautiful? And I'd look at her and say, yeah, Ma, it really, really is. And then she pulled my hair out of the brush and out of the comb, and she started wrapping it around pipe cleaners and putting in the doll, like the doll is over there. And she then put a skirt on it, and she ripped a little piece of her apron off, that on it, and then she got nail polish and painted eyes, and she held it up and said, isn't this beautiful? Second daughter. She called me second daughter.
You were second daughter, yeah.
And I said to her, yes, it's absolutely beautiful. And she said, and so are you.
Wow.
And she
Wow.
said, and every girl on this block is beautiful. And never compare your unique beauty to anyone else's, or never put anyone else's down. You're all beautiful. And that's, and
This is an amazing
that's-
story. This
that's what
is
it's
a
doing.
mother's lesson to
Right,
you, right? And I think what's so important, you took this with you, and it's something that you use in who you are.
Mhm.
Your mother's lesson is something that you took with you.
Absolutely, and I just came back from being in Cambodia, and my house had the water tank burst, so I came home to a flooded basement, and so for weeks getting it cleaned out, getting that black mold from growing.
Oh.
And today I picked up a box, and I just said, I gotta throw this out, I gotta empty the basement, but something was written on it, and what was written on it was a story that I wrote about my mother, and I just said, wow, I almost threw it in the garbage.
And you have this whole show going
Yeah,
on.
and
That's like something.
And I just found it, and I picked it up, it was empty, one piece could fit in it, and I read it, and it said on it a note that my mother said to me standing at the kitchen table. She said, don't be like mommy, don't have fear, fly airplanes, travel the world,
Love it.
learn languages, drive a car, drive a truck, don't be like mommy. That's what
Wow.
was on it. Don't be like. She grew up with a tremendous amount of fear, and her and her sisters were very, very close knit. And one of the things that we never knew about until their dying bed is how Uncle Bobby was lynched, how Aunt Bruce was raped, how the Klan marched through Florence, South Carolina on Sundays once a month, how Grandma pushed all of the furniture up to the front door, put the kids in potato sacks in the basement, and said, stay there. We never heard those stories until they died.
What year was it when she was dying? What year was that?
My mother's been dead 51 years.
So 51 years ago, that was an incredible truth that she shared with you. Not a lot of people have that.
I don't know that she shared it. She was dying, and
It was just there, right? You
as
talked.
well as her sisters. And another beautiful thing is that when Aunt Ruth, my mother's younger sister, who had all these dreams of being an astronaut and could not because of brown skin, who could not go to school because of brown skin, who couldn't study this because
What a
of brown
time,
skin,
right?
didn't finish school until she was 47 years of age.
Your mom?
My mother's sister.
But she finished school. That's the
She
point. She finished it,
finished
right?
school, and she learned many languages.
Yeah.
So she stayed in the South, and it was just, we all went to take care of her as she was dying, and I would go for walks. And I remember going for a walk and recognizing like a little jazz club, 2 o'clock in the afternoon in Florence, South Carolina, that looked real New York. So I walked into it and I looked around. It was really cozy, like this room was. And the guy at the bar was a musician. We started talking. He had a very New York accent. And he said, I am from New York, but I came here to take care of my mom. I'm an only child.
Wow.
And so
Wow.
we were talking and talking and talking. And then his mother walked in. And she came in and she handed him shirts that she had taken to the cleaners. And then I was sitting and engaging with her, and she kept looking at me and looking at me. And she said to me, are you a Durante? And I said, no, my mother was a Durante.
Wow.
And she said, Ruth Durante, Dorothy. I said, those are my mother's sisters. I said,
Oh my God, the chances of this happening, this is quite a
And she
story.
said, Dorothy. I said, she's passed. And she said, well, Ruth. I said, she's dying. And she said, she is. And I said, yes, we took her out of a nursing home and we have her in her house. And she said, sit down, I want to tell you about your aunt. And I said, okay. And I didn't even know I'd looked.
Yeah.
For a look at her, Durante. And she said, your auntie wore red lipstick and high heels into the classroom to all us brown girls who were segregated. And she told us we could be anything we wanted to be. And she said she wore beautiful, beautiful clothes and she had nail polish on. And she said at the end of the day, she would go to the closet and kick off her high-heeled shoes, put on her sneakers, and she would pull out a crowbar. And she would walk all of us down the country roads where we lived. And she would take us to the roads that we lived in, where her students were, and the parents would come out on their porches and she would say, run. And the kids would run down the road and go in. Who would be in those bushes would be the KKK's teenagers.
That's why you had the crowbar.
And that's why she.
That's why you had the crowbar. Wow.
That was my Aunt Ruth. Never knew.
Amazing.
That. And she said that's what she did every day. So I said to her, "Would you come and see her?" She said, "Absolutely." And so she said, "I have to go to church. I have to do this." I said, "It doesn't matter.
Come when you come, right?
Just come." So I
Right.
ran home and told my sisters the story, and they were so excited. And she said she would come at 7. 7 came and she didn't come. 8 o'clock she didn't come, and we were all sitting on. Ruth was laying in the bed dying, and then the bell rang, and we opened the door, and she walked in. She had a crowbar, and we all backed up in fear of this crowbar that she
Right.
had, because we didn't know what.
Right, what to expect.
She said, "Where is she?" And we said, "She's in the room around the corner." She walked around the corner and she went over to her and she wrapped my Aunt Ruth's hands around the crowbar and she said, "You are beautiful. And you gave us the power to be what each one of us are." She named every student and told what they were.
You're just gonna make me cry. I'm welling up right here. What a story.
So this is Mom's younger sister who was able to live out the dreams that my mother was not able to as
Right.
the oldest. So domestic.
Right, right.
So that's why I guess I had 3 moms. I died.
But isn't that incredible, right? Because you can have as many moms as you want. You know, when we think of the definition of mother, right?
It's broad.
Right, exactly. And mother can be a relation, can be a grandmother, can be a friend, can be anything. I mean, right, exactly. And it's what they pass on to us. You brought up the fact that you just got back from Cambodia. I know that you've been dealing with human trafficking there. You're a mother to a lot of those women.
Yeah, certainly am.
Yeah.
For 19 years, I've been traveling to Cambodia, working with girls who were once in the sex industry against their will.
Right.
And
This is a known fact.
I've just been home 2 days, and I developed an apron project with the girls who were rescued much later, 18, 19, 20, 21.
I wanted to ask you, what is the Apron Project? That's really an important thing to share with people. It's important work, what you're doing.
What I noticed in Cambodia when I would go every year with art supplies is that girls who were rescued between the ages of maybe 7 and 12 had a better chance of flipping what happened to them.
You're flipping the
By
script.
having therapy, by having meds, by game playing, acting, fish farming, learning, I mean, everything. They were able to flip the horrors of what their past were. But a girl at 19, 20, 21, it's all in her eyes. What happened is a cloudy eye.
Yeah.
There are marks all over her body where she's burned by the Johns. And I decided that those are the girls that would suffer more because they couldn't read and write, and the young ones could be put in school. There is no remedial
Yeah.
program.
Well, there was hope for the young ones, but the old ones, I'm sure the eyes were dead. The damage had been done. The fear was there.
Absolutely. So I developed an apron project because my mother was a domestic, and because we as young girls were a little ashamed of a mother who cleaned other people's houses, particularly very wealthy white people's houses 8 blocks away from us. We were ashamed of it a little bit, particularly when we went to school with kids, their parents were doctors and lawyers and things like that. But what my mother did, she worked for very lovely people that cared for her. And one family had not only my mother, but they had 6 or 7 people, the gardener, the cook, the nanny for each
Right,
child.
of course. And that still goes on now. You know that. Yeah.
So they one day said to her that they wanted her to wear a uniform to work so that all of their staff looked the same way. So my dad would come every day and pick mommy up from work. And she would walk out the back door. And I always said to her, "Mommy, why don't you walk out the front door like everybody else?" And she said, "Second daughter, okay." And then she was very, very quiet going home. And as she cooked dinner, she was very, very quiet. And my dad said, "What's going on?" And she said, "They want me to wear a uniform." And he says, "I told you don't have to do this work. I provide for you. I make enough. You don't have to do this work." And she said, "But this work makes me free. This work makes me independent. I can send Vicky to piano school. I can give Sana
all the
lessons.
extras.
I
Yeah.
can send them to the hairdressers. I can have money in my own top drawer, and I don't have to ask you. I feel good in their houses. She said, their houses never get dirty. They have 6 and 7 maids. She says, I clean in 20 minutes, and then I sit there and put my legs on the couch and I look at TV.
Right.
She said, I look at the beautiful objects they have collected from their travels. She said, I'm in another world. She said, it's not hard work. She said, they trust me that I have 6 and 7 houses on one block. I put the laundry room in, then I run here. She said, I eat foods that I've never eaten before. And I heard her say that to him. She said, here is chaos. 5 children, you, aunt, and uncle. She says, I'm at peace there. And then she looked at me and said, Sana, the children that I parents, the kids that I work for, they never see their mother and father. They're making movies. They're traveling the world.
Yeah.
She says, I'm here for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Honor me. Let me be. I never fussed with her ever again
Right.
about being a domestic. What she did that weekend, she went up in her room and she pulled out her Singer sewing machine. She made a pinafore, the kind of things, dresses that women wore in the 50s that wrapped around
Yeah,
big
of
pockets.
course.
And it was beautiful. And she put on red lipstick, she put on her heels. She did once a week on Sunday, and she walked us to the school, and then she began to walk down the street. And I remember entering the fence of the school and turning around and looking at my mother walking down the street with a tiny little waistline with that pinafore on and shaking her hips and saying, my mom is beautiful.
Yeah, and you were so proud of
I
her,
was
right?
so
You were
proud
so
of her.
proud of her.
And then when she got to the home where she worked and they opened the door, they said, where did you get that dress? She said, I made it. Can I wear this to work? And she said, the lady said, you can wear whatever you want.
Love it.
And she hugged her.
Love
And
it.
so when I go to travel, my mother died January 2nd, close to 50 years ago. I always travel that time of the year because it's when I would have a break from teaching in academia. Because I want my mother with me, I'd always carry something with her. So one year I took her pinafore and I wrapped it around the pillow and it became my pillowcase. And then I woke up and every morning, I stopped doing it in the last couple of months. I talked to my mom. I talked to my dad. I talked to Aunt Ruth. I talked to my ancestors. I don't go to a church, a mosque.
Don't stop talking to them, Sana. Don't stop talking to them. They're waiting to hear you.
And so I looked, after speaking to her in my little $8 room in Cambodia, because that's all I can afford, that I have to clean for 2 days before I can lay down because it's not.
Yeah, they're nasty at $8. I stayed in the $15 room. It's not much better.
It's not our standard of clean.
Right.
And I looked at after speaking to her, I looked down at my pillow and I looked at her pinafore and then I went for a walk and I heard a young voice say, Musasama, and that means older sister Sana. And I looked, and it was one of the girls. This was my 8th year in Cambodia. It was one of the girls that I had met 8 years ago. And by her dress, I could see that she voluntarily walked herself back to the brothel.
Wow.
Money. When I
Wow.
looked at her dress, and I became sad, and she saw it in my expression, and she said, it's been hard for me, very, very hard for me. But Sana, I know surrender. I know surrender. And she grabbed my thumb. And then I went back to the room and said, I am going to create a project here that every girl who even has a hint that I can't feed my children will not look at the brothel at the corner and her body as money. Instead, the Apron Project developed. So when I
Amazing.
started in my 8th year, I had 9 girls. I just came back from Cambodia. I came home with 100 aprons. And that's how the Apron Project started for Mom.
Well, what's such an incredible story. And you look at what you're doing to affect these girls' lives out there in the world. It's absolutely amazing. But you gave us your backstory. Look at who you come from. Look at who your parents are. Okay, your grandparents, Aunt Ruth. And you carry them all with you, and don't ever stop talking to them. You see this room we're in? It's filled with spirits. I've had so many friends perform here that aren't here anymore. I talk to them. My late husband, his work is on the wall. I talk to him here. This is one of those spaces. It's very important that you continue those conversations, because I'm going to tell you, the work you're doing is not easy, but there's things propelling you forward, and it's an important lesson to learn. You have to continue that. Okay, you're changing people's lives, and you know
changing my life as well.
Exactly,
It
and
made me into something that I didn't know.
Right.
I didn't know that I could work with girls who were raped. It's my biggest fear as a woman moving around the world.
Is rape. Fear
It's the only
of
fear I
rape.
really have.
Yeah.
So when I went the first time, I didn't know that I could work with a girl, and I actually took an art therapist with me in case I had a meltdown.
It's interesting though, you took an art therapist with you. You didn't take a regular therapist with you. Yeah.
Therapist with me.
Right.
But when I met these girls in 2007, I thought I'd go into a room and meet what was a girl.
Yeah, right.
Vegetables, saps of skin. But what I
They're
met was
still very
powerful warriors,
right.
girls dancing, singing, learning, fighting for their lives. And I realized then, I want to be a part of their recovery.
Yeah, you're going to be the wind beneath their
So I
wings,
never
as we say. That's it. That's who you are. Olivia, you know, you're an artist. Your mother, you shared some of the influences your mother had on us, but, you know, we're all of a certain age now. How much of what you learned from your mother, the life experience with your mother, is coming out in your art now? I know you had a recent show.
I mean, listening to Sana talk about her family makes me envious in a way. In that there's a family structure, sisters, brothers, mother, father. I didn't have that. I was like an appendage to my mother, traveling around the world she was trying to find herself.
Her footing. She was married
her-
a couple of times, you said, right?
Yeah, she was married 3 times.
And you were the child. You're an only child, I'm assuming?
I'm an only child.
Yeah.
My father had another daughter in Holland who is my half sister, and I'm happy to say that we love each other and
That's great.
know each other
Yeah.
now. But growing up, I had no one. I had no family here. I had nobody to talk to, nobody to rely on, nobody who could tell me I was smart or beautiful or this and that. I just had this a spirit, a rebellious spirit, I would say, and tried to find my own way. And the way I don't know how I found myself. It's a long journey, but through friends and through just I don't know, you know, writing and maybe drawing or just the discovery. I mean, one of the things that I think about is that I think in my mother's life, and maybe anybody that was around in World War II, there is a kind of secrecy, a no-tell.
Yeah, there was
There's a no-tell, and they don't want to talk about it, and a shame that I would see coming through, and exactly what that was, I don't know. I just remember seeing people that were not like me and being very interested and wanting to know more about them. Like in Portugal, the gypsies, you know, I'd see these wonderful people wearing all these incredible outfits, and, you know, my mother and her friends would say, oh, they're Romani, oh, don't, you know, bad. I'd say, but they're so beautiful, so colorful.
Right.
And the fishermen along the shore with their faces with, like, you know, all these like weathered lines and hair, and just simple people of the earth, the people who you could almost feel the love oozing out of them, which was different from the community that my mother was part of, which was they were all escapees from communist Czechoslovakia or here or there, and they would get together and they would drink and laugh and cry and sing and recite poems and do all of these things, but they were part of a kind of free upper class, and I just it just didn't jive with what I understood to be right or correct.
It didn't jive with who you were.
It didn't jive with me as a child, and so there were problems all along from the time that I came here till I was a teenager, college student, or whatever. However, in my mother's defense, she had her own spirit. She was able to leave Czechoslovakia, go to Germany, Holland.
Yeah.
With
a child.
Portugal,
Let's not forget. She was a child.
With a child.
Yeah.
So she had a really strong love and connection to me, but didn't have the support that she needed to raise a child, properly. Even though, she did love me, but she just really didn't know, and I don't know. I think I'm very lucky that I had this spirit, and that my foundational years in Holland were very good. I think I had the love of my father, my grandmother, whoever else was there, and then snatched away, and dumped here to where I was telling somebody before. I was born in Haarlem, Netherlands, and when I came to the United States, I was in second grade, and the kids asked me, and I had a black teacher, which was very unusual, Miss Lucas. I loved her, she was beautiful. But the kids asked me, so where are you from? And I said, Haarlem, and they said, no, that's not possible. Can't be from Haarlem, but yes, I am. And so, now I live in East Harlem, so it's kind of like.
So there you go. It came full circle for you, right?
Around. Yeah. So I have always been trying to find myself, uncover my history, look for family in my community and in others. I don't know if that answers the question.
You know what? We don't need to answer questions here, okay?
Yeah.
You both brought up a really incredible theme. Family on your end, looking for it, reaching out to it. Family on your end, you're both artists. And I'm going to throw this out there. How do you think where you are in the family, who you want to be in the family, has affected your work from when you started creating art until now? I'll throw that one to you, Sana. Yes. How do you think, like, from when you were a child into now, the effect of family on the art that you create?
Well, both my parents didn't know what an artist was, to be honest.
Wow.
At all. So my father, had he had a choice, besides being in the military, which he made a career out of, wanted to study law, anthropology. My mother had dreams of being a nurse or traveling the world. So they implanted their deferred dreams into their 5 daughters.
As parents do, we got to give them a pass on that. They tend to do that.
That's what they did. We all 5 of us went off to school, and I was very creative as a kid. And teachers told my parents, take her out of the community and put her into other schools. So when I was growing up in the 50s, there was a program called open enrollment.
I totally remember it myself, right?
And it was really basically taking black kids
Yeah.
out of black neighborhoods
And putting them into white
and putting
schools.
them into white schools.
By the way, my father, believe it or not, Israel Saul Fleischman, was one of the people that started that. Liberal, Jewish. I grew up going to the South Bronx because my father was working with the community there to try and enact this. And how was that for you?
Very difficult, but
Difficult.
extremely difficult for
Yeah.
mom and dad because they were scared people from what they came from.
Of course.
So to take their second daughter and send her on a
Yeah.
bus an hour away from home.
The busing,
All
right?
they could think of is the clan that they ran from going home. And so they didn't do it for 1 year, 2 years. And then my next door neighbor, Mrs. Wilson, knew of it, and they would always see me sketching or in the yard playing things and rearranging. And they talked to her and said, give her a chance. Our schools didn't have materials.
You did not, right?
We didn't have books. We 67 of us shared a book. So my parents took a chance on their second daughter. The second daughter that seemed to have the fight.
Yeah.
The push. And so,
And the talent.
and the talent, and they sent me to Richmond Hill to PS 90. And I just remember the first day of school, the teacher, the only brown kid in the classroom, teacher gives us all a piece of paper and says, we want you to join your families. So I thought to myself, I'm gonna make friends when people see how well I can draw. They're gonna like me and be friendly to me, because at that point everybody had bristled when they saw a brown kid walking into the room. The school had been prepared that brown kids were coming, but in my 4th grade class, I was the only brown kid. I didn't see many others. So I just remember sitting there, and my dress was a starched white collar, because they starched and ironed it so stiff that it was hurting my neck. And my mother was telling me, you sit there and you be quiet, and you follow all the rules, the things you told brown children, you know. And I just remember sitting there, the teacher gone around the room, and she would have had a shoebox, and she would pick up in the shoebox and drop a bunch of crayons on every kid's desk. And then when she got to my desk, she was taking a long time to give me crayons.
Wow.
And so I just sat there looking at the white paper, and I could see her shoes there, and I couldn't figure out why I wasn't getting the crayons. And then when I looked up at her face, I saw such hatred for me.
Incredible story,
And
right?
so I sat back. So she wasn't giving me crayons. And so I reached up to grab crayons. She slapped me. And I fell back into the chair in shock. And all the kids in the class laughed, but the laughter was not funny. It was of fear. And she then threw down the black crayon and said, that's all you need. And I took that black crayon and I drew. Drew, and I drew. And when I went home that day, I told my mother what happened. She put me in her lap and she said, you are a pioneer. You are a pioneer. She went and got me my own box of crayons.
Absolutely.
And she said, you're gonna go back to school with your crayons. And she said, you're gonna share them, but every day when you leave, you're gonna bring them home. So what my mother put in me was fight.
Yeah.
Fight back. Fight back, and I think that's what I've done in the 19 years in Cambodia, is teach the girls to fight back.
That they can fight back, okay? That they're not done and they can fight back. And that is really amazing on your part. Right,
She
right.
gave me power. She didn't encourage me in arts. I left home at 17 because there was too much arguing in the house, because I wouldn't study anthropology or said what they wanted.
That's what I majored in, by the way, but that's okay.
I left home to become that artist, and I guess the only teeny regret is both of them died long before they ever saw me reaching anywhere in the world.
The status that you've reached, however,
They died.
I tell you, I believe they look down and they see it, and the work that you're doing with those girls from Cambodia too. You are, as a human being, accomplished, and that, you know, and I get who you are. I know you have a lot more you want to do. Yeah. You too. What do you see? What's your next?
My next, I'm working, I've been working on, both in clay and paintings, images of people, struggling and also supporting each other through the crisis of immigration and retention and removal and trying to get here and there from wherever just to find a decent life that they can
A place that they can
live.
call home.
A place that
Yeah,
they could
place
call
they could
home.
call
Yeah,
home.
yeah. So, that's what I'm doing, and still trying to discover who in the hell I am. And,
It's fine. Does that discovery ever stop, No.
No,
You're artists. It never stops.
no, I don't think it does. No.
I think we uncovered so much here today in a show called Our Mothers, right? I think everything we talked about is our mothers, our grandmothers, and all of our sisters out there coming through us, here today. Oh, don't worry about my papers. I'm always a
I
masquerader.
thought they were going to fall.
No, they never fall. It's amazing. The spirit watches over me. I would like to take some questions from the audience that I have here today. So I'm going to call on Wendell. I know you're just burning with a question.
Yes. Well, let me make my questions, of course, about the exhibition itself, and I just wonder how you all feel when you see your works mixed in with these others, and I mean, Angela did a fantastic job of pulling the various
Amazing,
artists together
yeah.
and the works. But how does it feel to see your work in the context of
In a collaboration, this is a collective, it's a collaboration. How does it feel for you to see your work with other artists on this wall?
To me, it feels like home.
Okay,
That's good.
Feels
Yeah.
like home.
yeah.
It feels like differences of home. Homey, home, and maybe not so, and struggles and joy. So I see a bunch of different things. I like the subject matter of our mothers because we all have them, and they all have made us in some fashion who we are, and then
Absolutely.
yeah,
Can't
and
get
we
away from
take-
that.
No, and we take it from there and pass it on to others in one way or another, and it's kind of the way the world works, right?
Right, because I always say everyone has a mother, has known a mother, has mothered somebody. This definition of mother is very, very broad-based. Very broad-based. Do I have another question? Yes, thank you.
First I want to thank you for the wonderful life stories that you shared with us.
Yeah.
Really moving. Mothers are clearly a big part of everyone's life story, and also you reminded me why I always felt in love with artists before Angie. But my question is, what sparks your creative activity? I mean, even if you know a general idea what you're going to do, is it a conversation on the street, or something you read, or a memory? What gets that blank piece of paper, with ink on it?
So the question is, what sparks that creative activity from a blank piece of paper or a piece of clay?
For me, it can be anything. It can be looking at two women loving each other at a bus stop, to wondering what happened here, or how this it can really be anything that I'm emotionally affected by. Emotionally, yeah, it's an emotional thing, a memory. I mean, when I came back from Prague after my mother passed away, and I went to meet my mother's sister, my aunt, I like coming down from the hilltop to where I was going to meet my aunt, there was a thunderous storm, and the lights went out at the restaurant where we were supposed to meet, and I took a look at my aunt, and she looked so much like my mother, although my mother was the beautiful one, but they really were like two peas in a pod. And I burst out into tears, and I couldn't stop crying for hours and hours and hours. And from that, I started making these teardrop pieces in clay. And
Teardrops.
Teardrops.
Your teardrops, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then, you know, I had to find a context, and I made a whole series of pieces. But it came from that moment, that deluge that I couldn't control, you know. So I don't know. That's one or two examples.
Yeah, but it's a great example because your catalyst was your emotions.
Yeah.
That got you to create those pieces. Sana, what about you?
I think that it's my traveling around the world and seeing things that shocked me or hurt me,
Emotion. Again, we're talking about emotions.
and wanting to talk back.
Yeah.
Something that I was encouraged to do with my mother, to talk back.
Talk back or fight back. Right.
So that's where most of my work is spirited from, is living in different villages where clay was. I got on the road to see where clay was because I didn't have art school training to go to graduate school to work in clay because I'd been doing my mother and father's dream. And so I bumped into clay in my final semester at CCNY, and picking up this material, I had a very instant emotional
Connection to it.
when I squeezed it, it squeezed through my hands, and it took my fingerprint, the memory, and the vein lines, and recorded something. And I loved that. I loved that the room was filled with women at that time, talking about the world, politics, the Vietnam War, that they were traveling, something my dad did. I went to the library and did some research and found that the clay comes from everywhere in the world, and then it's in every color and personality that people are in. So I began to travel to study clay, where I'd see things. I'd want to record them to come back and share with my mother the stories that I was seeing, showing her what I was doing. The Ice See Me dolls just came about during the pandemic, to be honest, where I was hurting so much living in the same house that I turned the doorknobs inside out, written on the walls, and my mother's neighbors were still alive. And I became very, very depressed and unhappy. The mail stopped coming, the mailman stopped coming, the bus stopped.
Oh, it was just bizarre. We're still not talking about how it completely disrupted absolutely everything. I'm still carrying it with me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
And it's good to talk to other people that are still carrying it with. I can't sweep it under the rug.
no, not at all.
Yeah.
So I think walking around the house, because I couldn't leave the house,
Right.
I uncovered that wood doll that we had made together. And
Amazing.
then I started making these dolls. So this is the work that came out of pure mom. But I think the drive and the fight to travel around, to walk around the world came from their deferred dreams. And then to bring them back to my community, share things that was happening in the lives of little girls that didn't have their own culture. And everywhere in the world that I traveled, little girls are role switched. Sometimes I was their mommy.
Yeah.
But many times
You were the
they
little girl.
mommy.
Yeah.
So
You were the little girl.
the series comes really from her, but all the rest of the work really comes from walking around the world. And I built houses, dwellings that are the shape of my body, the anatomy of my body, the height of my body. And someone said something very interesting in a review. Everson said that she rarely sleeps in her own bed. She walks around the world and she's creating houses. That she is in the house.
She is in the house.
So dolls, I see me comes from mommy. Purely from mommy.
Beautiful. Do I have any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, this is for Olivia, because you're an only child. And Sana described the support that she got from her mother during these dire circumstances when she was in school. So I was curious, did your mother give you support when you were deciding to be an artist?
No. Really no. The one thing that she did, I paid for, I went to Pratt and I worked in the key punch department and I got tuition remission.
You worked your way through school.
And I worked my way, but she did give me money to go to Italy one summer to study sculpture. So I went to Pietrasanta and I studied there, and I loved it, incredible. But no, my mother never understood my work at all. I told Angie today when she asked, I showed my mother my work, and this was like in the 90s or the 80s, and I was doing a lot of installation work, and my mother took one look at the slides, and she said, smells like communism to me. I mean, and
come on, I love that though. I mean, I feel for you, Olivia. I do, but right, and from everything you told us, of course, that would be her reaction. Not good support for you at all.
No.
But you know what? You're sitting here. You've done what you've done. You're accomplished, and I guess like the big thing here is our mothers can influence us, positive and negative. My mother wanted me to work for the phone company. I grew up in the Bronx and I grew up with very little. And my mother's dream was I would go work for the phone company because I would have a steady salary, and the phone company was a great place to work, right? Bell Telephone, they took care of you. We all have our own version of that here, and that's what's coming through. You both dance to your own drum. Okay, and you both go out there and you create your own thing. Okay, and that at the end of the day is magic.
my mother once said to me, now, she said, how are you doing financially? And I said, I don't know, whatever. She said, aren't you sorry you didn't take that job with the telephone company?
Yeah, I'm telling you, I know this. I've lived this.
You could have been a supervisor by now.
I swear to you, that's what was in the cards for me too.
You could have been a supervisor.
God, we would have known
now.
each other, Olivia. We would have worked at Bell Telephone. We would have had like fat pensions, and instead of being like artists with no pensions, you know.
But I had to say, but mommy, I never worked for the telephone company.
I totally love it.
Okay.
Any other questions while we're throwing this out? Yes.
I
Angela.
would like to know how New York City has played a role in your lives as artists.
Do we want to say New York City? Do we want to say the Lower East Side, or
No,
all of the above?
no.
Just New York City. I got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
How has New York City affected both of you as artists?
I think the diversity of everybody here,
Musana.
the diversity of everybody here and people coming from many parts of the world. I remember, and I think probably about 13 or 14, I told my mother that I was going to the library with Francine, my best friend on the block. And I was lying. I was going to West 4th Street to become an artist, because that's what they were. And so it was really funny. We got on the bus, and Francine was an only child, and she did not know how to lie. You learn how to lie when you got 5 sisters.
Yeah, right, really.
You know, so we got on the bus, and we were giggling, and she was a little timid and shy. And I said, we have the second outfit in our backpacks. And we were sitting on the bus, and we were giggling and laughing. And I was trying to get her to just light up. She was so scared. You're right. I mean, the bus cost 25 cents. So anyway, we noticed that the bus stopped and it was still, and we were giggling and laughing about what we were doing, changing our outfit. And we looked up and the driver was looking at us. And he said, if you don't get your black asses off this bus, your parents are going to know what you're doing on Sunday. And we charged off the bus.
Flew off
and
that
got
bus.
off the bus. But it was coming to Manhattan that
Yeah.
made me think that that's where all the artists were. And if I went there enough, and every single day, it would happen fast.
Yeah, of course, it would rub off on you
It would
because
rub
all the artists were here. If you were here, it would happen to you
So that's
too.
what made it was kind of, so I don't know where I got in my head, but West 4th Street.
No,
But it's still West
No.
4th Street. I'm there all the time. I love it. Yeah, it's great.
me too.
You too.
So,
West 4th
me
Street
too.
also.
So
love
I
it.
mean, I grew up in Queens, in Flushing, you know, in Flushing, right, until I was like 18. But me and my girlfriends, we would go to West 4th Street and
Yep.
McDougal Street and hang out.
McDougal
And
Street.
we'd meet, you know, all these people and just hang out. But that I didn't know that I was going to be an artist or would do that until, I don't know, I think until I always had it in me, but I lived with a jazz trumpet player when I was like 18 to like 21. And I got to see what it was to be an artist, to like just to do what
Passion. What your passion.
what the
Have the passion is about.
yeah. So then I got that job at Pratt, and you know, and there it went, and then I moved to Brooklyn, and then I always wanted to live in Manhattan because that's what it was, and moved to Canal Street in
Yeah.
1980, and
Back
met
in
people,
back in those days.
and,
Wow.
yeah, and hung out and met this one and that one, and you
I
know,
love it.
yeah,
And here we all are, right?
Here-
Everybody
here-
survived it. We're
yeah.
everyone is here. That's a really great question, by the way, Angela, because yeah, New York has a way, you know, I always say there's people that can come here, they don't last. And then there's the people that come here and they're, you know, they're meant to be here, right?
And stay.
And
Yeah,
stay
stay.
and just do their thing. This has been so great. I love the stories. The stories to me are really the most important thing. We never get to hear that, you know. A person can say they're an artist. Okay, what does that mean? We're in New York, everybody's running around, they've got their artist shingle out. But these personal stories and the work that's created from it really is everything at the end of the day. Thank you both so much.
Thank you, Wendy.
Wendell, thank you for producing
Wendell.
this, and Angela
Thank you, Angie.
Fremont, I mean, the curator, the visionary, right? The absolute visionary, and thank you to everybody who is here and for your questions.
Thank you,
All right.
Wendy.
June 9th is going to be our next one, so be there or be square. Thank you.
Okay.